Hello, and welcome to Temporal Horizons Summer Podcast. Please enjoy the show.
Welcome to the summer podcast. Today we have a very good anticipated invité, as I would say, a guest from the Backstage Centre, and not just any guest, but Brian Warrens, who's the director of the Backstage Centre. So welcome, Brian, on the podcast.
Thank you. Hello, Pauline. It's lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too. Basically, we're going to talk about the Backstage Centre and your role in it. So the Backstage Centre is based in Purfleet, and that is towards Southend, so the east part between London and Southend, basically, for those who don't map it. But that's a fantastic centre where there's a lot happening, like a lot of different stages around the Backstage Centre, where we're going to talk about all of that, and a big part in the entertainment industry that a lot of people know already, but we're going to talk more about that. So Brian, can you tell us more about your role as the director of the Backstage Centre? Like, what do you do as the director there?
It's not an easy answer because I have to wear several hats depending on what day of the week, and that's partly because of the different industries we work with and the people who are our clients, our stakeholders. So we're quite a building. The building's in its 10th year, so it's our 10th birthday year. We're just coming to the end of that birthday year. We haven't really done anything to celebrate because we've been too busy, to be honest with you. So it started its life really because of something else that happened on our production park, which was during the Olympics in 2012, or prior to that. The Royal Opera House, they had to find some new premises to relocate their set building and costume construction departments. So they had to leave where they were in Stratford in East London because the land that they were on was going to be used to build facilities for the Olympics. So they went scouting around Essex and other parts and came across High House Farm, which at the time was a derelict, rundown, very old. I mean, we're talking part of it sort of Tudor, so it goes back a long time. This beautiful old falling apart farm in sort of West Essex, so it sits just inside the M25 by the Dartford crossing, and decided that's where they were going to make their home. So they came in. They did all the groundwork. They brought in a team of top architects to design for them their building, their costume building and their set construction building. So that all happened, and then not long after that, they decided, well, we've got this big farm, this big park. What else do we need to do? Brought in other partners, which included the National Skills Academy, Creative and Cultural Skills Sector, and local stakeholders like us. So we all came in, sat around various tables and had lots of discussions about what another building could look like. What would it be? What would it do? And that's where the idea for the Backstage Centre came about. So to build a building that would provide a place you could obviously produce content, rehearse shows, do whatever you needed really, but also provided training as well for the creative industries. And that's exactly what they built. And it opened, as I say, 10 years ago.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's so interesting that it came from already such a big entitled company from the Royal Opera House, and from a dancing set performance to, we'll talk about it more, but more modern production and now TV and cinema productions. But yeah, and you still continue to have spaces, so at the Backstage Centre, to have rehearsals as well, rehearsal studios for productions. But now, so you have a lot more. Can you talk about the sound stages? I know you have workshops and all of that.
Yeah. So we sit on the park. There are other buildings. So we have two beautiful old restored barns, which can be for anything really. So they've been used for used for filming. They've been used for community groups. We've had them hired for sort of spoken word events, conferences. They're really multi-purpose, and they sit on the park and are pretty actively used. Also on the park we have other partners in the area, so we have Thurrock Music Services. They're based there as well, so they provide provision to all the local, particularly young people's schools and young musicians in training, really, that are emerging and coming through. And also on the plot is it's a building run by a company called Acme, and Acme are basically they nest artists together in buildings, and there are 40 in this building, 40 independent artists, of which some are resident. They have resident studios, so they actually have accommodation built in, and the others just have a studio space in which they can work. So it's a real sort of mixture of people, a mixture of skills and practitioners that live on the park. And in the Backstage Centre we have a number of rooms as well. So we have a dance studio, we have rehearsal spaces, we have basically rooms you can do anything you like with, and pretty much that happens too. So it's a very busy park. There's a lot of sort of activity, and probably it's one of its most, I suppose, appealing selling points is that it has the most beautiful grounds and gardens as well. So there we have an orchard with a beautiful lawn, a walled garden, all sitting adjacent to these wonderful old Georgian and Tudor buildings. So it really sets a very attractive backdrop. And in fact, this weekend just gone, we've had an event there for the community, which was to give people the opportunity to do something different. So we had something called Colorscape, which is a series of polytunnels in which there were musicians playing, and you can come and walk around through the tunnels and explore and enjoy the music. So it's never a dull day, and no day is ever the same. Now contrast that, at the same time as that was happening, we were finishing filming a new feature film, which was an action movie. So there was quite a lot of stuff happening outside of our building at the same time as the Colorscape was being set up. So the sort of juxtaposition of the two is actually one of the most attractive things that you'll find, is because you never know kind of what's going to be happening one day to the other.
That's great. That makes me think, like, because there's so much happening in so many different areas, music, TV, community, do you see a lot of groups merging together, or really interesting collaborations forming within the Backstage Centre? Have you seen that happening?
I think not. It wasn't intentional, but I think as time's gone on, some people end up working together. And now quite often there'll be very practical reasons why. So they might be working, companies that are fairly locally based might come together to work with an artist, and then they form a relationship, and then they go on and work together for a number of years. So they might support the music industry, or they might support someone in the theatre world. The beautiful thing about the creative industries, although we are, we're a big employer, but we also have, I suppose, really, they're almost like tight families. People work together very closely, and that's right across all the disciplines. So we tend to work with people that we've got to know over a period of years, and when we see them come back again and again and again with different shows, it's just a reassurance of that fact that we rely on that, because most of us are freelance. We don't have nice cozy employed jobs. I said cozy, I don't mean that. We don't have employed positions whereby we've got a regular salary coming in, and right now it probably isn't very cozy with the cost of living crisis. And for freelancers, it's about consistency, that they know where the next job is, where the next income's going to come from, and being able to plan ahead. So if you work with people that you know and you trust, that kind of helps. That makes it a bit more secure. So we do see collaborative work, and in fact, out of the Royal Opera House building, before it actually opened to make any scenery, the Royal Opera House, they have an outreach learning and participation team, and they were working with the local community in Thurrock to produce a community opera, which was called Lud and Isis, and this was performed in the building before they built any scenery. So they actually then kind of turned it into an auditorium with a stage, took over the whole park, turning that into a kind of big market. And that involved hundreds and hundreds of people locally who had never performed in their life, who were now in an opera, singing with some, some big stars from Covent Garden and musicians for a one. Well, it was the only time it could ever be performed, so it was a one only opportunity. So that really brought people together, and from that, the community wanted to create their own community choir. So they ended up, I think, at the height of it, and this is just before, sort of lockdown and all the impact from COVID, they had something like 200 members. So from a really small idea, in a sense, it grew into this big thing. And they still work together. And so they now have what's called the Purfleet Opera Company. And they meet every week to rehearse, sing and perform.
Oh, that's amazing. I'd love to see them one day. That would be a 200 people that came from well, not just, but from this event. It's great. And yeah, it kind of feels like a birthplace in a way, where things grow from the Backstage Centre into, like we said, meetings and communities, and the world of the Royal Opera House just merging together and then forming something that creates other things in other communities. So it's amazing. It's really, really great. Coming from that as well, you talked about training. So I know you work a lot with students from the University of Southend. I've seen that happening. Can you tell us more about this relationship, and do you have more universities that you work with?
So they're very involved, and South Essex College, or I should say South Essex Colleges, because it's just been renamed, and they have now focused the attention by location. So you have Southend, Basildon and Thurrock. And sitting within that is the University Centre South Essex, who provide all the HE and degree programmes for the college. The relationship with the Backstage Centre has been from day one, and all the training provision, all the ideas for what could be delivered from there. At some point along that journey, the Backstage Centre and the college and some of its other partners have been heavily involved. So in more recent years, one of the key partners has been the University Arts London. So the University Arts London helped the college to write new degree programmes that were appropriate to some of the skills gaps that we have in our industry, and in particular with wigs, hair and makeup. So we have a degree programme there, and costume construction. So it's quite an interesting sort of twist on this. What the costume construction degree came first. That was the first one to be developed, and it came out of the need that we have quite a severe shortage of technical practitioners who know how to work with all the costumes and all the different stylings in terms of their construction, the making of them, but also the maintenance and the longevity. The Royal Opera House, when they make things, they make them to last for many years. So it's definitely not a throwaway society. Everything is reused, and of course needs repairing or needs replacing over time. So that was a really important course to develop, and it was written with the Royal Opera House. So they were heavily involved, and they are heavily involved in how the course runs, with a superb course team. They all work really closely together, and a lot of students have completed the course and gone on to work at the Royal Opera House. So it's been a great journey from there. Now the new kid on the block is our wigs, hair and makeup degree, which it's just finished its second year, about to go into its third. Again, this was written with an industry group, so it is probably the only degree programme in the country that is truly diverse in terms of the skills you learn. It deals with absolutely anything you could face on set, on stage, or anywhere else for that matter. It looks at special effects, training students to be ready. It's a practical course, and it's really important that anything that we are supporting and really looking to promote it through the Backstage Centre, that we know there's a reason why it's there, and that it's not just churning out people because you can do a degree. It's making people really good practitioners, and there is work. So that's really looking at the skills gaps that we've currently got. We're currently working on some new programs as well, which we've only just started to bolt together. and they'll be announced in due course. I can't really talk about them at the moment, sadly. But again, it's all about meeting the gap. So where we have a gap, we know we're struggling with things like sound engineers, recording engineers. We're short of people who can put things in. So these are sort of systems engineering technicians that can install equipment in our venues. So again, these are things we're looking at. What can we do to make that work, to work with apprenticeships, help develop those. So there's a lot of work, and it never stops. This is a constant journey. So the education relationship for us isn't just about what we do in Purfleet. It's about what's happening all the way along the South Essex corridor. So from Southend to Basildon to Thurrock to where we are. And obviously with other partners around the country that want to come work with us. So our door is always open.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, would you like to invite more people to collaborate with you in that way, or is it like busy enough? But yeah, if it's always open, then people definitely should reach out, because you've got great, like a great center and a lot to give from there. So
Yeah, I think that's really important. Is that it is about the open door. Wherever we can, we have the open door policy. I mean, sometimes we're restricted. We can't let people on set because we've signed, non-disclosure agreements, and we have to wait, until they've been gone, then we can talk about it. But when people are able to get access to the soundstage, we're able to do things in there that aren't easy to do elsewhere. So we can do pyrotechnics training. We can teach people how to do flying, to work with counterweight systems or automation. We can really do things that other spaces can't do. The only problem we have is when can we do it, because the soundstage is booked up so much with clients. So the soundstage has great provision. It was designed for that reason as well, that it wasn't just a practical space in which to rehearse and produce. It is also a space that has features built into it to ensure that we can train people, so we get everyone ready for when they start their careers.
So I've been backstage at the Backstage Centre. I've seen a little bit of the backstage, and there was this amazing room where you can walk at the top, and I don't remember how many feet high. Can you remind me of that?
Yeah, so you were 50 feet in the air.
That's it.
Or 15
Yeah.
meters in new money.
Oh, that's
And
it.
you probably walked on the tension wire grid, which is
Yes, I did. My feet were too small, and I had to keep my shoes on, because otherwise I would just slip my foot in the grid. That was, yeah.
So you were on, that was the west end of the grid. So the grid is designed in 3 sections.
Yeah.
So where you were is to get people used to working in spaces that we might expect to see in television studios, for example. And in the middle, we had the gangway kind of catwalks. So that's more our kind of arena style. And on the other end, on the east end, we have a traditional theatre grid. So that allows us to, when we're training people, train them in different areas. So before they get let loose on a venue with a show, they can practice first, rehearse, train, whatever it is they're doing. And it allows us to also throw all the problems at them that they might face when they go into a venue. So this is probably one of the most interesting things about the UK. The United Kingdom has a vast number of venues, but many of them are really old. They're, of an age where they're doing things now that they weren't expecting to do when they were built. So a lot of the people that work in them have to work around the problems that creates. So the fact that we can show them different types of grid means that, well, whichever venue they're going into, they're going to probably find one of those, and they can just have a little think about how they're going to work with it first. Or they can ask us, do they need some specialist training? Can we help set that up for them so they can be trained in our building? So that was its purpose, to put all that equipment in. And sitting above all that, so where you were, where your feet were falling through, above you, there are 7 channels in which we can roll rigging points. So that they tend to be used by the client more than anything else, and that's really their purpose. So that whole roof, the whole design of it was to really try and do everything, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Why would you have like several space that reduces the amount of space that you've got when you can have everything at once and then just play with it around within a huge space. It does make sense, definitely. And so within this space, you said that basically there's a lot happening in there. Were there any projects that you thought were your favorites, or that you found really interesting, that you envisioned there?
I think right from the early days, the funniest show we ever had, probably the most fun, was a live broadcast of the very popular TV show Towie. So The Only Way is Essex, obviously being about Essex, the building was approached to host a live episode, and in the soundstage they actually built a theatre with an auditorium. So this was to celebrate, if I remember right, I think it was Arj, the character of Arj. It was his birthday or something. So it was a big kind of party for Arj. And the beauty of doing live television is that you never know what's going to go right, what's going to go wrong. And quite a bit went wrong, but they managed to just about get through it. And it was one of those shows that was a real risk for the production company, Line Pictures. I think took a real risk there with agreeing to do this, because normally with the shows they do, they pre-record them. They've got time to edit and then it goes out. With this, there's a slight delay before it goes out, but not much. And it went out on a Monday evening at 10:30 or something. And it was a full-on production, so their production values, they'd really pushed the boat out on, building set that was actually quite, it's an expensive thing to do. They had a live audience. They did a red carpet sort of treatment for the show, and they were using many of the rooms in the building as set as well. So they had cameras everywhere, they had equipment everywhere, and the logistics was full on. So it was a really big production team for that show, and it really helped us test the building, because it was quite new then, hadn't been open very long, and it allowed us to see what worked, what didn't work, and pretty much everything was as we expected was going to be fine. And the little bits that didn't quite work, it was kind of, great, we know that now, we can change that or add, take away, or whatever it was that was an issue. So that was probably one of the highlights early on, because it was really challenging. And then just logistically, probably the only other one in the early days I can think of that really pushed the building was the recording of Guitar Hero live for Sony. So there you had, I think it was a 14-week shoot. You had a green screen stage in the sound stage, pretty much taking up the whole room, 300 extras every day, doing different genres of music, musicians everywhere. And it was absolute chaos in a really lovely way. So it was so big they had to put a changing room marquee in the car park to accommodate all the extras. So when you've got something that pushes the building again, that's good for us. We can see how it works, what worked, what didn't work, what do we learn by this. And even better that back then it was a time when we could get students more hands-on with some of these shows as well. So we had students helping out and working on some of these shows as well. And as time's moved on, that's actually become a lot harder to do, particularly if they're under 18. Someone's 18, great. Anyone under 18, it's just an insurance thing. It just becomes a little bit more kind of, restricting. But we've seen some great things. And in recent times, it's probably been the television work we've done. So where we've been working with some of our companies that make shows for Sky, we formed a really good relationship with them. The product's really good, it's got some big names in it, great set, and again it's about that feeling of family when the same people are coming back to work in your building. So that's always a good sign when it's you see the repeat business, as we call it.
Yeah, it's an insurance as well for you as a working centre, and for them as well to know that they have a space they can just book and know that is going to deliver, basically. So for sure. I read as well that you said that your favorite part about working at the Backstage Centre was to remember why it was built. And so we talked a little bit about that, but for you now, has it changed, or what's the core now for you of the Backstage Centre?
That's a good question, because it's actually probably become more important now that we go back to how it was at the beginning in terms of why, which was, yes, we need to make, entertainment industry is huge, and right now we're really busy trying to make loads of content for people in all formats. What we don't have are enough people to do the making. Some job roles it's really a struggle to recruit for. So our focus has been on the cycle of training, and that journey from someone who's actually very young. So we're actually targeting quite young children to get interested in creative subjects, to think about what their choices might be. I do a lot of school events now, so I go into schools and speak to young people who are making their choices maybe for what they're going to do post 16. Are they going to do A-levels? Are they going to do a vocational course? What they're going to do, is that transferable? Is that something that we can use in our industry? So an example of that would be somebody going on to train as a telecoms engineer for British Telecom. Well, we use networking engineers absolutely everywhere nowadays in our industry, and there aren't enough of them. So there's a transferable skill. Somebody who might think, oh, that's a nice secure job working in the telecoms industries. Well, actually, the entertainment industry is a massive client. So something like that is something we keep an eye on. And to do that, we have to work with a lot of agency, and we work with different organisations that help us find out where we can find people that have got the skills, because we need to teach those skills to people. Where is it that they can do this? What do we got nearby? What do we have at South Essex College in terms of training? What are other people offering as well? Are we going to be able to meet the demand as quickly as we can? So we've gone back to that question. With the commercial side, it's right, what are we doing? What are we missing? What is it that we need to be doing? So in fact, doing just this, so this is doing a podcast, is a growth area. That's been a massive growth across the whole world, not just the UK, and has seen studios pop up where you can do podcasts on a nice set, and it's all very, very lovely. So we know that's a thing, and that's something we can do. But equally, it could be the bigger version of that, which is what they call XR stages. So that's the LED walls and floors, and we've seen that in sports broadcasting. We see it now in the news. They use it all the time, and it's crossed over into the corporate world. So we've seen people put them in their boardrooms, so they, I think, can show off to each other about how cool their boardroom is, and turn it into any location they want. But where it's had its most impact is in particularly the film industry, for filming things like car chases and sequences that involve vehicles and speed, because you can wrap around a vehicle your location, that can be anywhere in the world, by using LED screens. So there's been a very quick leap, and we have to keep on top of that. We have to ask the question, do we have those skill sets now? And if we don't, how do we train the next generation so that they can come and work in our building?
And I think you're great at finding those ways, and you kind of have like a future mind, like a futuristic oriented mind, in the way that you think of what will happen in 5 years, 10 years in the technology and in the entertainment, for it to anticipate and find the ways of training, and then anticipating what you'll need in terms of whatever budget or instruments that you'll need. So you mentioned engineers, and what did you find of all the role? Like, for example, if a young person is listening right now, what other roles did you see lacking in the entertainment industry?
It's pretty much every department, I think, has had an impact one way or another, and some of that was down to the impact from the pandemic, where people have changed careers and have left the entertainment industry. Some people have left because they're unwell and were ill. And we also had quite a big impact from when we left the European Union. So Brexit has meant the free flow of people in and out of our industries being restricted. So we know there's impacts right across many disciplines. And what we're sort of saying to young people is try and open your mind as much as you can to consider the range of things that we can offer in terms of a career. So young people that we speak to are very motivated by what they enjoy doing themselves. And that's why we've seen the explosion of the kind of growth of social media and how it's being used, and now how it's being used commercially. So we've seen big growth with YouTubers that have done quite well. In fact, we work with the Sidemen that record a lot of their content in our building. And they're a good example of connection to a younger generation. So if I do a careers event, I always take images of Sidemen, and I can guarantee you every child that walks past knows who they are. And it's a very important connection for us because it's got them excited about production for that style of media platform. And if they're interested in that, then maybe some of those people will be interested in theatre. And the theatre industry has been the hardest hit, probably out of all the industries since the pandemic. So although we still have quite a number of young performers, what we don't have are the older ones. So people of my generation as actors who don't necessarily want to go touring around the country anymore and be away from their families, or they might be worried about their health. So we've seen there's been a sort of a shift with who's available to do what. In terms of coming into the industry as actors and as performers, those figures are still looking pretty healthy. We have a very good quality of performance skills in the UK, and now that's a lot wider. So when I trained as an actor, I think we had sort of fairly direct visions about what that might look like. I don't think we back then ever would consider a career in motion capture performance or doing aerial circus skills. That really wasn't a thing back then in the way that it is now. So to see our performers being really more versatile is fantastic. Now, and this is a message to anyone who's considering this as a career. If you are training as a performer, you do need to think about how you train for the digital world, not just for the stage. The digital industries are huge. The skills you need as a performer are more diverse. If you are good physically as a performer, then obviously chucking yourself around a soundstage, doing maybe stunt work or motion capture work could be something for you. So these are things that aren't really thought about when someone's at school. I don't really think that could be a thing or a job. And it's a fantastic job, but it does take a certain mindset. And then we have the parts of industry which got really affected by COVID is coming back. Similar problems to theatre in terms of recruitment, and that's the music industry. During COVID, we all listened to music. None of us went to any gigs other than the odd one online until such a time that we could go back. And when we went back, we were all quite cautious. And so for a lot of the bands and the artists, it's been really hard. So for emerging new artists coming through, they've had to look at an industry that got really quite badly hit and is only now starting to come through. So suddenly we've got gigs happening everywhere, there's bands everywhere, and young people are getting excited about music again. So we want to get that message out that, you know, let's get that back, let's get the heart back in that again and do that quickly. Because the thirst of an audience is never going to dissipate and vanish. We love music. The UK is a big spender on music. And we go to a lot of gigs, we have a lot of festivals. And if you look at Glastonbury, over 200,000 people there at Glastonbury. That's a lot of bodies in one, I was going to say one field. It's a lot of fields in Somerset. It's huge, yeah. So, you know, that's a big message. And then the other bit I focus on are all the other careers that we use that people don't realise. So it's all the logistics. So we need lawyers, we need people in finance and insurance. We also need accountants. We need medics. We need security specialists. We need haulage companies. We need people to provide us with things, so suppliers. And when you open that up, it is a vast secondary layer of employment. So it's great. It's not just the one thing that I think when you say entertainment industry, we think about the nice shiny things. that we used to. We don't think how many people behind that one person. So I'll give you an example. Recently, or last year, Steve Coogan rehearsed the Alan Partridge tour in our building. So his production team was quite vast. He is essentially the star, but a whole entourage of people around him. Without them, Alan Partridge, the character, doesn't exist. And that when you see that, when you explain that to people and say, there you go, we've got a script writer, we've got the director, we've got movement specialists because he's got dancers, we've got lighting technicians and all the lighting crew, we've got sound engineers, we've got video walls on this brilliant set, so we have stage management, he needs costume, he needs hair, makeup, wigs, he needs to be transported from venue to venue, and it's all that. When you put that all together, there's a company of 40 people, just for one kind of name. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, people I think don't realize how many people work actually in the behind the scenes of anything artistic, any show, any production. There are tons of people. And yeah, for example, like the music, like you said, there are also tons of people. I was wondering on that part, so the music part of what you work for. Do you collaborate with records? How bands find your space as well? Because you've got a big sound, but a big sound space for recording. So how does that collaboration happen?
So all the clients come to us through various directions. So most musicians will either come through a channel. So we do work with Vivo, the music channel. So they provide the artists who will come and record a video, for example. If it's a pre-tour of an artist going on the road, then that will come through a different agency, but it'll either be through a promoter, come through a record label directly, or it'll come through another similar sort of role. And that relationship has been fairly established for a very long time. That's pretty much how most people work. And so we have our sort of regulars that we work with. So, it's the same companies behind them, and they promote a range of musical acts that could be anything from classical to contemporary to pop to indie to whatever. Usually linked with either a tour or a festival or a launch of a new album. So they tend to be the main reasons why you get some activity. When a video is being made, it's quite cool because the pressure they're under is huge. They have very little time to make a video because it's so expensive each day to film, and they need to get it out as quickly as possible. So if someone's in for probably no more than a week, that will be pretty full on, and they'll use a lot of equipment. It's been well designed, and that's got to reach a market. So if it's something for an international music channel, potentially that's being watched from anywhere in the world. So there'll be so many kind of areas of design that need to appeal to different markets. And it could be that the artist is specifically targeting a young market, for example. So if you're working with somebody who's an emerging pop star, for want of a better term, they might have a target demographic of young children from the age of 7 or 8 up to sort of 14, 15. But they've also got to target the parents as well, because they want the parents to buy the tickets for the gigs. Because when they go to the gigs, they're going to buy more stuff and merchandise and albums and all that. So it's a big machine, and without it, it'd be very hard to sell music. So they do rely now on thinking about all those elements. And then the other side of it is when they need to rehearse quite a complex show. So they might have a lot of technology in the show. A band like Muse will use a lot of technology. So they'll use lasers, there'll be a lot of staging, possibly video walls. The band are really into their tech. So they'll happily produce a full-on show. And when you go and see them, you'll come away and go, wow, that was amazing. Because it's technically very rich. And then you get others that'll just be the musician and the guitar in a single spotlight. Them and their voice quite often. But they're a big name. And it goes from one to the other. But they're equally as important in the way that we work with them.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, there is like such a scale that you can go through with music industry and the entertainment as well. But the music industry, there is such a scale. And it's interesting mixing both the visual with the music as well. It happens so much more now that I think during the pandemic, we've seen we couldn't do anything else than watch online the music as well as listening to it. So it's brought a lot of musicians to rethink their stage for sure, because we want entertainment even more, I think, particularly with social media, short spam attention, short attention spam rather. So yeah, definitely. Just I wanted to talk a little bit about the business side of it, and because you're the director, and how many people work at the Backstage Centre as like employees, basically.
So as a core team, there's 10 of us, and when we've got a client in, there could be anything up to probably 200 people. So, but in terms of who works there, so in terms of the Backstage Centre, we're a team of 10, and then additionally we have anyone from the teaching teams. So that could be up to another 6-7 people, milling around the building or in the costume building. And the workforce does occasionally fluctuate. So we might have an event on and we might need to bring extra people in to work for us. So just for the event. So we might need people working on catering or helping us with front of house, or we need more technicians helping put something on. So when that happens, we just bring those bodies in as we need them. There's not enough of that work to run through the year, because most of the time all the clients that come to us bring all their crew with them, and we will help them find crew when they're short or they just can't get somebody, or it might be a skill set we have and we can say, well, you can use us or use one of my technicians. So the business model is to be as versatile as we can, make sure we meet the needs of the client. That's really important. But equally, if they're struggling, or they might be quite new to the industry, so not overly confident that they got it right, so when we have our first meetings with them, we can just double check they've got everything they need. So we have a very wide reach of access to freelance people as well that can be brought in, or it might be equipment that they need, and we can help get that for them. So you treat everyone on their own merits, and you never make any assumptions that they got everything they need, because we're all human. We can all forget something. So that's the kind of relationship on a sort of day-to-day basis. And in terms of the crew and the staff are the business, the staff are the Backstage Centre, and not one person is more important than anyone else, and that includes me. So I don't have an office. I hot desk, and that's a conscious choice. That to me, I don't need an office. I'm here in my office at home. I don't need two. If I need to sit at a desk on a computer, I'll just go and find a space and I'll work. So it's quite a nice way of working, that we try and be as flexible as we can. The team have weekly meetings where they share information and anything that might need working on, or they'd like to do something. They might want to learn new skills. So it could be we've got to do their first aid training, or we need to do something fun like fire training. So if we're going to do fire training, we'll make sure we make some fires and put them out, and make it sort of really, really kind of industry relevant. But that has to come from what the staff are telling us. This is the job I do, this is what I would like to help me make that job more efficient. Or it's just something that they think will help develop them a bit further in a more general way. So all of that we will consider and do what we can to support it.
It's brilliant. I like the fact that you don't have an office, because then you're in the heart of it and you see what's happening around you, and people see what's happening with you, and they can talk to you freely. So it is great. Yeah. I know that we have probably 15 minutes depending, but I wanted to talk a bit about the future of the Backstage Centre. If you can tell me, I know you said there are some aspects you can't talk about, but is there anything you can talk about, projects coming? Yeah.
I can give you some teasers and some I suppose the next 5 to 10 years, an overview as best we can. It's quite hard because so much is subject to all sorts of things. So I suppose the most important thing is to talk about Purfleet itself. So Purfleet is going through a regeneration process as a town, and it's part of a very wide project that sits within something called Creative Estuary. And the Creative Estuary project, which is a government funded and Arts Council funded provision, is looking at basically the two sides of the River Thames, from sort of London all the way down to Southend on the one side and Margate on the Kent side, and just looking at what is in that region in terms of creative and cultural assets, whether that's art studios, recording studios, film studios, TV studios, theatres, art centres, whatever it is. Well, where are they? Who are the people that are running them? And have we got enough of them? So as part of that process, Purfleet was identified as an area that needed to have some cultural and creative regeneration. So although obviously the Royal Opera House had popped up on the park and we'd popped up, the rest of Purfleet was still fairly stuck in, I suppose, many hundreds of years of evolution, hadn't really moved much further forward. So the community were brought into this, and there's something called the Backstage Centre Regeneration Limited, which is a company created by the developer for the regeneration with the people of Purfleet. So they've helped shape what's going to be coming into that new design. So it's a big project. It's over £1 billion of money being spent on it. So that's the regeneration of the town, building new housing, new social housing. There's a new school, health centre, town centre. And sitting in the heart of all of this will be a studio development. So in the studios, and I can't talk about anything about what's going to be in them, other than to say that they will be the very latest thing and will be very forward thinking. I doubt there'll be anything else like it in the UK. So it's a really exciting project, and that will sit in harmony with all the work we're doing at High House and in the Backstage Centre, and to be seen as working together as an all-in-one. We are the creative industries all working together, all supporting each other and collaborating as partners. So it's a really good vision. Overall, I think the whole build was something like a 10-year project for the regeneration. It's a lot of buildings, a lot of work to do, lots of mud to be dug, turf to be turned. So that's all going on. Essex itself is having little pockets of activity. There's some exciting stuff in Basildon with some growth of digital facilities there, which the council and South Essex College have come together, and they formed a bit of a little partnership that's helping to put some new resources into Basildon, which is great because Basildon's had a superb history of innovation and has produced probably one of the best bands to come out of anywhere in Depeche Mode. And it would be really lovely to think that they could do the same with the digital world as well, and sort of explore media outlets and where that will go. And then down in Southend, obviously, there's a lot of work going on. We have Metal, the arts organisation based at Chalkwell Park there. We support them as much as we can. We all try and work together. All the people that are part of Creative Estuary, we all sit round tables together. We talk about creativity, who's doing what, where, can we help, can we support each other, and that's the sort of the message. And for us, one of the sort of the critical bits of making that all work is that we keep the Creative Estuary message constantly on the go, that we don't ever let that drop off. No matter where you live in Essex, there should be something happening, and you should be able to get to it fairly easily. So in Thurrock, they've recently been awarded some funds for their Creative People and Places programme. So that's a fantastic community-based funded arts or creative cultural concept, which is headed up by the legendary Katie Beadle. And Katie is based down working with the Port of Tilbury authorities and the Tilbury Town Trust to form the central hub for the Focus for Thurrock. There's a similar project in Basildon called Create Basildon, and obviously in Southend you have a similar sort of scheme, but literally the helm of that ship is Metal, and all the work they're doing. But they're working very closely with all their other arts partners. So just in the South Essex corridor, there's so much going on, so much being developed. It is never a dull day, and everyone's putting in for funding, everyone's looking for new activity, and we want to make sure people can do that. And where we can, we'll help them. If somebody phones us up and says that we're really struggling to find rehearsal space, have you got a room, we might be able to help them out. So it's just doing what we can, just help them sort of move it on and hopefully save a bit of money as well.
Yeah, it makes sense to have, like we said before, everything in closed space together to be able to work together and form, I was going to say form alliance, but yeah, it kind of is like it, to be able to help each other. And it's great news to hear that there is funding for it, and that it's actually happening. We don't really talk about it, and it's great news to hear that there is funding for the entertainment industry. It's not a lost cause. Like a few years ago, we thought during the pandemic that was a bit crazy, to think that maybe it would go extinct a little bit, but no, it's still happening. We're still going strong and beautifully. So
we're getting there. We're getting back. Prior to the pandemic, it was the second biggest economy in the UK.
Yeah.
So we obviously were severely hit. But everyone was. Any business was really.
For sure.
Coming away from that, we're now getting back. We're not back to the same level again, but we're not far off, and we are making money again. We're seeing that come through. Theatres in the West End are starting to fill up again, so that's good. The theatre needs audiences, and I would encourage anyone, if they have got a spare few quid in their pocket, go and support your local theatre. Theatre is a great place to be entertained, and it's really important we keep our theatres alive, because they're the training ground for everyone else. People also forget that historically the theatre has trained all our performers that you see in television and in games. And the film industry, I don't know where it'd be without us. So that for me is a really important message to get out there, that it's not just one entertainment style or type. We all work with everyone, and we must keep doing that.
Brilliant. I agree. Thumbs up for that. One last curious question. Is there any personality or project that you would want to see happening at the Backstage Centre?
Wow. Okay. There's a list of things I'd like to see happening. For me, it's about tomorrow's market. What we have to kind of try and think ahead, almost with sort of psychic skills, to look into the future and try and predict how an audience is going to behave. And the way I'm seeing it is about fully immersive venues that wrap audiences with and saturate them and basically stimulate all the senses. And one that recently talked about, which people don't think about, that we might even consider it, is how we play on the sense of smell. Smell's such an important thing to us on a daily basis. We don't enjoy food if we can't smell it. If you go into a theatre, you can do some quite clever tricks just with simple perfumery. So I think, if we're going to excite all the senses, I think we also need to excite our diversity at the same time, so that everything has its kind of its journey, I suppose. So if somebody may be visually impaired, for example, that all their other senses that are excited, they're getting a bit more than just their hearing senses being entertained. Then there might be something physically happening to them as well that's exciting their sense of touch. So it could be something in the room that's affecting them. So these for me are the exciting journeys of where do we take that, how far do we push it, and are our audiences ready for this yet? Which is really exciting, because we are playing with some stuff now, which is all kind of slightly high tech and rather top secret, but if it works, I would be very pleased.
Great. Well, I hope it works then. I love that idea. It's true that I think I read recently that smell is the strongest emotion driver in us. So it makes sense to incorporate it. Definitely.
It is because it's funny with when we got really clever with lighting, particularly in theatre, we realised that as the technology moved on, we could do more with it. So if we were lighting, and I spent a number of years working as a lighting designer, so it's something I love. If we were lighting like a woodland scene, we could make it feel like a woodland with light. But what we never thought about was giving the audience a sensation of what the woods might smell like. And you add those elements into it. You could set time of year, you can set those emotions kind of running. And so I suppose it's that sense that we need to be working on now. And just think about how that works, because we're very good at going into our supermarkets and we might smell fresh bread being baked or a pizza being cooked or whatever it is, and instantly we're excited about food. Why don't we do that in our venues? That we walk into a theatre and we're excited by something we can smell.
Exactly. And supermarkets have already played that game. They're
way ahead of it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. We don't know, but we are guided by smell on what to buy. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you could play with hot and cold as well. There's lots of elements you can play with. That's something to look forward. If it works, I'll
tell you one thing about my very early career as an actor.
So
I was in a play called The Fall of the House of Usher by Pauline Pericaud. And our director wanted to play with the audience a little bit. So the seating was on, it was basically a series of 3 tiers of seating that were made of kind of large rostra blocks. So you could actually get people inside them. So they had a couple of people inside with feathers, and they were just tickling the ankles of the audience members just to kind of make them react. And we burnt incense in the room as people were walking in. So it was a really good way of building that sort of slightly horror genre tension, and it worked. So even back then, we kind of got excited playing with the audience, and I think we should do that more. I think we should have more fun.
for sure. Oh, I love that. I love that talk, Brian. That was so much insightful. Like, I'm excited now even more to what's coming. But yeah, thank you so much for today. It's already been an hour. I haven't seen it fly, but it has. And yeah, everyone keep looking forward to what's happening in the Backstage Centre. And Brian is always so open, and like, it's such a pleasure to talk with you always. So thank you again. And happy summer podcast, I guess. And we look forward to the 5, 10 years, 20 years of plenty of projects going on.
It's going to be busy.
It will. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.